COVID-19 pandemic has led to a rise in the number of people experiencing social isolation, depression, anxiety, and other emotional challenges. And on today's Vital Living Forum, we'll explore how holistic mental health approaches can help you manage anxiety and improve your overall well-being. Joining me are Christine Proctor, a licensed clinical social worker, and Princessa Long, a registered mental health counselor intern. Welcome to you both. I want to start out just talking about why taking care of your mental health in general is important.
Just like you have an ache in your body or you catch a cold, you go to the doctor, right, and you get it checked out to maintain a place of homeostasis with your health, right? Same thing with your mental health. Like if you're not feeling well in the sense of you're struggling getting up every day, you have low mood, you're feeling anxious, and it's affecting any aspects of your life such as social, occupational, relationships with family, you might want to get it checked up just like you would go to a doctor.
I think that one of the things to think about when we think about being healthy is that feelings are a signal. And in our society, a lot of times we don't tend to think about the emotional side of things. So I think being able to recognize that feelings are a signal, it's information, which is an invitation for us to look at something that's going on inside our bodies, just like the physical component that Princessa mentioned, is important.
And the pandemic has really compounded a lot of mental health anxieties that people might be experiencing. Talk a little bit about what that has meant as far as your practices are concerned and what you're seeing because of the impact of the pandemic.
Yeah, I definitely think that anxiety is something that all of us have experienced at a new level, even people who haven't experienced anxiety in the past. You know, the virus has created so many situations where control has been taken from us, or our perceived control of things. And being able to have some agency over the choices that we make and our lives is really important. So most of us have experienced at some level or another a lack of control. And that has led to a lot of different symptoms that a lot of people don't really recognize because they have not necessarily been as intentional about their mental health as we need to be now. For example, the loss of control and the loss of so many things like our schedules and our interactions, even just at the grocery store.
That huge loss of quality of life. You're seeing people not being able to go out and interact with their friends. They're having trouble sleeping. They're concerned, like, you know, it's an invisible, well, just like your mental health. How you feel is just like chronic pain. You can't see it, it's invisible. So something that I've seen, especially with my clients, is an increase in their normal go-to coping skills. And I would say a lot of the negative coping skills went up. So maybe if you were drinking or smoking or, you know, things like that, you might spend more time doing those unhealthy coping skills as opposed to the positive ones, or spending time in isolation, right? And separating yourself from everybody and being, you know, like not having access to doctors as easily, not having access to, you know, going to the grocery store the same way. So those changes in life, you see people managing it with negative more than positive because they're looking for the quick release, not realizing that negative coping skills don't have any long-term benefits.
And you know, as we get older, we basically don't have the same kind of major life events at the same frequency that we had when we were younger. And this COVID pandemic has been a major life event for a lot of people. And talking about losing control and coping mechanisms, how have you seen in your clients the biggest changes for people who've been like, you know, this is just bad timing. I'm older and I'm having to make all these changes. How is that impacting your client base?
I think that it's coming up with new ways to interact. And like when you're talking about the older adult population, right? We're talking about, you know, like how agile are they with technology? You know, can they do a telehealth appointment? Do they know how to log in? Have they even been, you know, they're used to being able to call in the office and go fill out paperwork. Like I have somebody that they have been struggling with anxiety during the pandemic, and they told me they called around looking to talk to someone, and to do the paperwork, they said, oh, you could do it online. They don't know how to do it online. So they actually had to coordinate someone to drive them to the office, do the paperwork, just to turn it into the receptionist, to, you know, go home again and wait for an appointment to be scheduled, because they're not that adverse with, you know, they're not that tech savvy.
Another thing I've really been surprised about and did some research about because I was interested in it is this idea of resilience. You know, the older that we get, the longer we live, the more we are able to figure out what works and what doesn't work for us. And a lot of the research shows that older adults have more resilience than young adults. You know, they've lived longer, they have more wisdom, and that wisdom is comprised of emotional self-regulation, ways to deal with life, compassion and empathy. And some of those factors have really potentially been protective factors during this past year, because they have had those skills that they've developed over time. And I was surprised to see that a lot of the research shows that older adults have, as a group, a higher level of being able to be responsive to stress, anxiety, and to be able to be more resilient. So I actually have seen a decrease in the number of clients that are interested in therapy, either online or in person, that are from the older population. So that was surprising to me.
For so many people there who aren't accessing mental health care, they bottle up a lot of their anxieties, they're bottling up a lot of the stresses. Talk about how bottling up those emotions can really have impacts that ricochet throughout your life.
Oh man, that's so my belief system, and based off of my education and my experience, is that our bodies are one big storage system, right? And whether you recall it or not, your body always remembers. That's why when we get triggered, and you know, Christine can probably relate to these thoughts when you're working with your clients, you're providing them a lot of education on how something may have triggered an overreaction, and be like, okay, what does that connect to? And having people focus on where they feel it in their body, and you know, all the moments that led up to now being triggered. So, and kind of tying it in with the pandemic, you know, maybe the loss of quality of life, you know, might trigger feelings around loss of quality of life around injuries, loss of quality of life and being separated from family members, and not realizing how much it all connects, that it's not just hitting on the here and now in this pandemic, it's hitting on every moment before that. And, you know, any irrational negative beliefs that may be attached to that, like I'll always be alone, or I'm not important enough. And, you know, especially for those people who are in caregiver roles, they don't get a break with the pandemic the same way. You know, the same services and stuff, especially, and I know that things are gearing back up with, you know, the vaccine going out and stuff like that, but, you know, sometimes it turns into 24-hour care, you know, and they don't get, you know, maybe respite care or something like that, or, you know, those home aides weren't coming out for a time period. So that can be exhausting and trigger, like, you know, all those feelings in that moment. And the thing about negative experiences, when they're stored in the body, when they get triggered, it always feels like those parts of the brain that get activated feel like that feeling is going to last forever, or it'll always be like this.
And you talked about the body being a storage vessel. What is the holistic mental health outlook and modalities? What is that all about?
Yeah, well, it's really self-explanatory. I mean, holistic means whole, right? So the holistic perspective is taking into account all of our systems. It's not just physical, it's not just emotional, but it's physical, emotional, the mental, the spiritual side of things, and the cognitive side of things. So it's really looking at the whole person. And one of the things that's shifted over the past few years is being able to recognize that we can't look at different pieces in isolation and expect that that's going to get us the results that we want. There's just so much more research coming out about the connectedness between the mind and the body, and you know, all of Pardon?
Even with illnesses, like how your
Yes.
body is operating, how it will produce illnesses.
So all of those pieces together really are important for us to look at. So a holistic approach to mental health isn't just thinking about the symptoms. How are you feeling right now? It's about what are the other components that are connected to that? What can you do on a daily basis, on a regular, putting it as part of a regular routine, to help yourself be able to be responsive to that. So building the resiliency, not just looking at the symptoms, but looking at the root causes and what all of those contributing factors are. And I think there's an additional component of adding that the responsibility for that is more ours than our providers. So there's more of a collaborative approach where we're working with you, but you are the expert on yourself. You may not have all the information you need for yourself, but you're the expert. And so in empowering people to take that responsibility is a gift, for us to be able to think about, I can have some control over what's happening with myself and my life, in my world.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to look more at holistic approaches to managing anxiety and mental health, so stay with us. Welcome back to this Vital Living Forum on managing your mental health needs through holistic approaches. And my guests are Princessa Long and Christine Proctor. I want to talk about the holistic modalities and what those are, and if you can kind of give us an explanation of how they differ from traditional mental health.
So an approach that I use typically with my clients to introduce the concept of holistic and working with anybody is I like to introduce like the 8 dimensions of wellness, right? Which focus on your social life, education. So how am I feeding myself intellectually? How am I feeding my spirit? How am I feeding, like occupational or staying active? My financial health. There's a number of them. And so looking at things from each aspect, right? And when you are living during the pandemic, right? Well, living during a pandemic, do I get to exercise all of these? How is my income coming in? Am I able to socialize? And when we think about those parts and different forms of mental health, different forms of managing mental health, we think about what tools can we use. One of them that has been pretty popular, especially with maybe someone who is struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's, would be music therapy, right? So, which has been very successful in working with activating those parts of the brain that associate music from that time period of their life with positive memories, and has been known to regulate mood and things like that, and bring people back to a present, exercising those senses to bring them to the here and now. What are some tools that you use that are holistic?
Well, one of the things that we use a lot is guided imagery. It's really a way to assist somebody in that, creating that mind-body balance and the stress reduction, and creating a state where you can feel more able to be responsive to the challenges that you have in life. Basically what that is either using an app or a recording, or sometimes in session, just getting yourself in a relaxed position and then listening to somebody else giving you cues as to where to relax in your body or what to be visualizing and thinking about that's going to create a reduction in the cortisol and the adrenaline and all of those hormones that are just shooting through our bodies a lot of times, especially when we are in this heightened state of stress. And connected to that is another tool called visualization. And the difference with visualization is that that's something that you are in charge of, so to speak. In my mind, I'm walking myself through all of the aspects of a particular situation that I want to be successful in, or as a way to manage negative behavior. So I'm thinking about, what do I see? What do I hear? How do I feel? I want to be in this situation. I'm relaxed. That means that my shoulders are relaxed and my stomach is not tense, and this is my tone of voice. There's a really interesting, famous study in the 1980s. A psychologist at the University of Chicago did with basketball players, and they were trying to improve their free throw as part of the study. And what they found was they had 3 different groups. One practiced the free throws standing on the line, one group visualized it, and one did nothing. Well, the group that did nothing didn't necessarily improve. The group that stood on the line and actually practiced the free throws physically improved 24%. The group that visualized themselves doing that successfully improved 23%. So our brain is really receptive to thought. And a lot of times we get caught in a negative thought cycle, which we don't necessarily recognize is visualizing. This bad thing may happen. So we need to be intentional about visualizing the positive outcomes and recognize the strength of not just the visualization of that, but then the actual doing. I mean, that's a huge, when you combine those 2 percentages, that's really strong.
Yeah, and to add to the visualization like that, it brings me to the thought around like hypnosis, and something that a lot of people say, oh, I'll never, I can't be hypnotized, or that's not possible. But some recent learnings that I've had around hypnosis is that we spend a lot of our time in a hypnosis state. Those times that you're not present in the moment and you're thinking about like what you could be doing, or you're thinking about, you're daydreaming in a sense, or you're not in the here and now, you're actually put yourself in a trance. And we spend a majority of our time in that state. And the positive thing about, seeing someone who's actually trained in hypnosis is that they can target those negative experiences that you've had in your life that are triggering anxiety and things like that. And they have the training to work with you around addressing those negative neural pathways and correcting them towards positive ones, and finding their origins, and also bringing and activating that calming response in your body that brings relaxation from stress, and overall peace to the body.
What is emotional freedom therapy?
So emotional freedom therapy is commonly known as tapping. And basically what it is, it's a combination of ancient Chinese techniques and modern psychology. So the reason it's got this nickname of tapping is because what you're doing in the process is you're identifying a negative feeling that you're having, or a feeling that's in your body, or negative thought. And at the same time that you're in this negative thought, you are tapping on specific meridians, pressure points in your body. And the signal so your body's getting 2 signals, right? It's getting this message from your brain that says, I'm not okay. And when you tap on these meridians, the physical signal to your amygdala is, I'm fine, I'm calm, there's no problem. And what your body listens to first is the physical. And so as you're going through the different tapping points and saying to yourself in your mind or out loud, like, this is what I'm feeling, your body is able to readjust. It's able to come down out of that hyperarousal state. And this is something that I've been using with my clients just more and more, because it's something that you can, after you do a few rounds of the tapping, can actually feel a difference physically and emotionally. And a lot of times what we're experiencing is so intense that it's hard for us to feel like we can get out of that loop.
Yeah. And the nice thing about it is all those meridian points or acupuncture points connect to different organs in your body. Mm-hmm. It was actually a therapy that started with Roger Callahan and has continued to evolve. So, and people have readopted different tapping orders and things like that. But something that's key is, and this is one of the acupuncture points, doing the chop, is this is a reversal point, right? And so you're also, once again, affecting that wiring, right? Those negative neural pathways with positive ones through tapping. And like you would start off with saying something like, even though I have this feeling of anxiety in my shoulders, because we feel it in your shoulders, you say what the problem is or what's bothering you or what the fear is, and then you give yourself compassion. I deeply and profoundly love, accept, and respect myself. And you'll do that 3 times, and then you go through a series of points. And there's a lot of YouTube videos on it.
How difficult is it for some people to adapt to these, what some people may say are new or different approaches to mental health, and using things like tapping, like the hypnosis? are people open to it, or is there a period of time that it takes people to really relax into the modality?
I would say for me, when I'm working with my clients, something that I see is a lot of people reach out when they're in crisis instead of like overall mental health management, right? And when they're in crisis, they're willing to try anything to make them feel better, right? So I see a lot more buy-in to, newer techniques, newer research that has come out versus, other clients that may not come in crisis or who may be more conservative. I find myself giving a lot of psychoeducation, and I meet you where you're at. And if you're there, then we'll slowly go along. And if, just using basic talk therapy, you're not getting the results, I'm going to be like, hey, what do you think about tapping? Or can I introduce this therapy to you that's, actually quite evidence-based?
People are more open to trying new things when they're in crisis. I've actually had more clients coming in proactively than I have in the past, which I think has been a good thing. But part of it, I think, connects to the relationship that we have, and there's a trust there. So because they trust me and that I have their best good in mind, and I'm able to collaborate with them and give them that information, sometimes we can walk through those things together, so it's not I'm sending you off, with this homework assignment per se. It's like, we're talking about this, we're in this together, let's go through a series of tapping, or let's think about how we might visualize how you would want that to be different, and be in that with them. So that really creates a huge leap over the obstacles, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
And what does the research say about the effectiveness of holistic therapies?
I think when we think about our mental health, we can think about that there are lots of options of things that we can implement ourselves, and we can also collaborate with providers and professionals to help with those things. But I think it's looking for what are those strategies that work the best for you, and what are those strategies that can give you the biggest bang for your buck at the point that you're at,
Right, because everybody's different, right? And what they respond to is different. And something that we didn't even touch on is there's other modalities. So maybe going to a therapist is not for you, going to an acupuncturist, going to someone who is trained in, some type of spiritual approach, just basically addressing your mental health based off of who you are. And if you think about it, holistic's not new. It's been around for centuries, and before, we got very sciencey, with everything. It used to be science was weird, and people were like, yeah, I don't know about medication. Now we're seeing it in reverse. Everybody's like, yeah, and I don't know about that holistic stuff. I'm not sure about that. So I think it just depends on who you are, your belief system, and what you feel comfortable with, and finding someone that can meet that level of comfort, or research your tools. And one tool that we both have that's really been powerful is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing by Francine Shapiro. If you look into that, if you're dealing with some long-term trauma that is still affecting your life to present, you may want to seek out someone who specializes in a specific technique based off of what you experienced.
Excellent. Well, there is more to this conversation, but it's time for a short break, so stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching the Vital Living Forum, and today we're talking about how holistic approaches can help you manage anxiety and improve your mental health and well-being. My guests are Princessa Long and Christine Proctor. We just talked about the different types of mental or of holistic approaches to mental health. One of the most important things is finding out more information. A lot of people are wondering, where do I go to find more information? What do you suggest?
I recommend starting off with a nice Google search, right? So you can search for a therapist online in your area. You can use websites like Psychology Today or goodtherapy.org. Put in, your insurance, you narrow down the filter. So let's say you have Medicare or you have Aetna, you can literally pinpoint therapists by zip code and the insurance that they accept, male or female, what therapeutic modalities you're looking for. If you're looking for non-traditional, so not going to a counselor, but other things, you can consult with your doctor.
I think also talking to people within your sphere, I mean, all of us want the information, and because of the pandemic, so many of us have been searching for more options and finding different things that work for us. So, to talk to people in your circle about, what are they doing? I have, people who are interested in using apps, as a way to use them for guided imagery or to walk them through a meditation, which is also a really good way for promoting that mind-body connection. Books at the library, there are not, I think, as many on this topic as up to date, as we would want it to be, but there might be some things in some magazines that connect to well-being, and I think there's just the sky is the limit, so to speak. But I think thinking about, to start with, what is it that I need? What is it that I want? What's my goal? And then looking for information that supports that seems kind of obvious, but sometimes we get overwhelmed and we don't even know where to start. So just bring it back down to the basics. What is it that I want to change? What is it that I want to accomplish? And start from there.
Definitely.
And you mentioned in our last segment that it really takes some trust to be able to understand and be comfortable with some of these, for some people to be comfortable with holistic therapies. How do you then go about finding a therapist that is a good fit for you?
So some of the barriers that I've seen have been like insurance or financial barriers that have prevented people from finding a therapist. Something that I recommend is a website called openpathcollective.org, which it's basically a social justice project of therapists offering private sessions ranging from $30 to $60. And you can basically negotiate that amount. And that's a good tool for people who may not have access. And then you can look at their profiles and see, do I connect with this person? Do they have any videos posted to make them more comfortable? Some other things you can do is like a consultation. Do you offer a consultation?
Yeah, I offer a free 15-minute phone consultation to people. They can ask me any questions they want, tell me what it is that they're looking to change, to work on, and get feedback from me about, well, this would be my approach, this is what I think you need. And a lot of times that doesn't end up being 15 minutes, but it's worth it, And I think one of the things that's important is to potentially be able to at least have some communication with the potential person that you're going to work with. If you can't do a 15-minute or whatever consultation prior to your session, give yourself permission to go to a first session, and if it's not a fit, to say it's not a fit. We know that that's important, and that's important to us. We want you to be successful.
Absolutely.
So if it's not a fit, I'm not going to take that personally. It's not about me, it's about you. And I will be glad to help you figure out who a good fit, potentially might be, if I know. And I think a lot of other therapists would do that as well. But I think just feeling comfortable advocating for yourself, this is about you, not about whether you're pleasing me or offending me.
Absolutely.
As a therapist.
Yeah, I've had clients when I did my consultation that if I wasn't a good match or I felt like I didn't have the skills to meet what they were looking for, based off of what they tell me, I can do a quick search and be like, here are several providers that meet your needs and also offer insurance because I do private pay, but basically we are advocates for you to get to where you need to be, and it doesn't have to be going through us. It can be through any modality that you feel comfortable with.
And are there ways that we can, without a therapist, to begin the process internally on our own, start to look at holistic ways of making changes in our lives?
Absolutely. I would say, one, looking at diet. Exercise, so are you daily getting up and moving around, because then you're producing all those feel-good hormones that affect our mood. Other things you can do are certain self-help books, or look at what Christine said, YouTube, you can YouTube meditation videos. Some great apps that have been really helpful are Insight Timer. So if you're a person that likes to meditate, you can pick your person live, or you could do a pre-recorded. You can say, I want to do 1 minute I want to do 10 minutes, I'm going to sit there for, an hour. Whatever your comfort level is, but you can start, reflecting on yourself. And as far as it goes for books, I recommend Getting Past Your Past by Francine Shapiro, and anything by Brene Brown. Matter of fact, YouTube Brene Brown. Like, look up her video on power of vulnerability and how being able to be vulnerable and share what you need, as Christine said, can turn things around for you and your mental health, because you start putting forth that energy to connect you towards your healing.
I think also sleep hygiene, like what are your habits around sleep? And that is something that so many people during the pandemic have had just turned upside down. Our schedules are different. We're working from home if we have that option. Our kids are home and we're trying to work and do school and do so many things within one environment that the structure, even for those of us like me who kind of push back on structure, I'll just go with the flow, we need that. We need some semblance of structure. So trying to look at what your sleep habits are and recognizing that you need to get good rest in order to be able to function, that affects our mood and all of those other things. And the other major thing I'd say is the social support, and whether that's in person or not, however you can have some kind of interaction is really important. Social support has been shown time and time again to have such a contribution to our well-being, to our longevity, and to enable social interaction. Really is kind of a feedback loop, like we're getting feedback from others. So it's not just the feel-good factor of being with somebody else or having a witness to our experience, but there's just so many factors to being able to connect with others. So being connected in any way that you can, I think, is going to affect your entire well-being.
Absolutely.
In the last minute or so that we have, are there things that you would tell the general public about accessing mental health care, about holistic approaches that you would like to leave with people to give them an idea of what they can expect and the realities of how long something might take to find their breakthrough?
I think that's different based on each person,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
And what you're comfortable with.
I think recognizing to start with that it's a journey. We're not going to start here and end here within a set period of time. To be open to acknowledging what it is that you're feeling, and that it's a journey, it's a process, and that you can find tools along the way, and that it doesn't have to all be solved at once. Being in the present is just a really hard thing for a lot of us. So what can I control today? What can I focus on, in the now? And also, I think also I would just really say, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. You know yourself the best, whether it's good or bad. It's your reality. You don't need to compare it to anybody else's, but you're the expert on yourself, and find those people that can be around you that will support you in your process and what it is that you need. And look for professionals, if you choose to go that route, that are going to support you in your goal, because it's about you.
Yeah, and take a chance and be vulnerable. Be vulnerable.
Well, thank you both for being with us today. And of course, thank you for watching this Vital Living Forum on how holistic approaches can help manage anxiety and improve a person's mental health. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.